Any comment on that?
I've missed the lunches. I'm going to be quite frank. I mean, being taken out for lunch was the highlight. So, but we haven't had that many stopping by. A lot of the corporations were really proactive in going out and making sure that there was some distance and some social distance. On our farm in particular, we sat everybody down. We had a socially distanced safety meeting. We did not have anybody that tested positive. However, we had 2 employees that came from houses where people tested positive in their house. And so walking through that and talking them through that, giving them 2 weeks to be isolated. And to me, it was interesting to see, rightly so, the fear in the community when they heard that somebody was coming from a positive house. And so the 2 employees actually never tested positive themselves, but we did give them time off and paid time off to stay away. And I think the employees appreciate the effort that's being taken. And similar to some of the other people, I mean, we're going out, we're disinfecting the milk house area for the milk haulers coming in, and then we're going out and letting our people know where they can get tested, that they're welcome to get tested at any time, and they should if they feel like they're have any signs and symptoms. But yeah, for the most part, we've been able to navigate through it fairly well with the employees. That's our primary concern. And it's been interesting to see the shift on the corporate level as some of these outside sales reps are finding ways to communicate. They're finding ways to send more emails or do Zoom meetings or Zoom calls on how to navigate through this and trying to maintain that touch with the customer. It's also been really insightful. I think corporations are seeing who brings value too, because a lot of these sales are still happening to the farmers, and yet their costs are going down. Their cost in travel and airlines and hotels, and so it's been insightful. And I think there's going to be an adjustment too on the corporate level as far as where they see value and who is providing.
Yeah, that's good feedback. Thank you. Well, I think we're going to evolve out of COVID now, get into some future-facing conversation. Let's talk a little bit about just what the growing year has been looking like. So, certainly hay cuttings have happened. Harvest is coming up. Like I mentioned earlier in the introduction, reports are really of bumper crop as you look at corn and soybeans in some parts of the country. And yet, I know that there are parts of North America, I think up in Eastern Ontario, especially, I think has been terribly dry. And so, John, do you have some info you can share as far as just kind of what you're seeing and how you're managing through that?
Yeah, like we were on 2 years now of the dry summers. The moisture started coming in 2019 in the fall, so they challenged getting the corn off. This year, our first and second cuts both were about 40% of a normal crop. Coming up towards the end of July, it was getting pretty concerning. The most common question that I heard was, does anybody have hay for sale? So a lot of people, I think they've really stepped up and learned how to adapt in these situations. So we took 70% of our bean silage, chopped it, our soybean crop, we chopped it for bean silage to have some extra feed, put some oats back in, planting some fall rye, just to make sure that we have enough inventory to get us through until next summer. So yeah, it's been challenging, but I'm really amazed how many farmers are able to turn the lemons into lemonade around here. And even though it was quite stressful, people are not afraid to sacrifice the yield of a certain crop, planting an earlier maturity variety, if they can double crop the field and make sure they've got feed inventory.
Yeah, Lloyd, how about right here at home in Wisconsin? What are you seeing on your farm? You're on mute, Lloyd. You're on mute.
Was that me?
No, Lloyd.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Yeah, up until about 3 weeks ago, we were looking at record crop, and then it turned dry. But overnight, just when we were making our 4th crop, we got 1.5 inches of rain overnight. So we're in good shape. I think the corn still has some benefit from this rain for silage even. And so we're looking at ample feed inventories. Last couple of years have been wet, so this has like been a vacation this year, not having to scrape mud off roads and things like that. Of course, now prices are really low in Wisconsin. Local prices for corn We're well under $3, which gave us the opportunity to buy some feed ahead because we do buy grain for our cows. So it gave us the opportunity. So I think there's going to be ample corn and soybeans in the Midwest. Soybeans are a little bit dry. Depends on what happens the rest of August here for them. But all in all, I think a really good crop here in the Midwest. In general, there are pockets of dry the further west you go.
Kevin, how about you? I mean, you and Dwayne, like you described, are not real far apart. What are you seeing on the west?
Well, we had a wetter than normal spring. About planting corn was maybe about 2 weeks, a week later than normal, than average. And just really wet and cold all the way through June into July, the first half of July. Normally they say corn knee high by the 1st of July. Well, my corn planted May 28th was barely to the top of my boots on the 1st of July. But then it all turned around about July 15th. It started getting hot. And for the most part, corn has actually surprised me. It's looking pretty good. Probably an average yield for most people this year. Some farmers, tougher soil conditions, they're going to be disappointed in their crop, I think. But with the cool, wet weather, we got a lot of grass came off. A lot of really good grass growing weather. Most guys are probably taking their 4th cut off this next week or so. And if it stays nice for September, we're going to have a 5th cut, maybe some 6th cut beginning of October, middle of October. Corn harvest is going to be late. We're looking last week of September, well into October for our corn to get off.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so again, I think, but just back to the point, I mean, the as varied and unpredictable as the weather has been, the extremes that we've kind of seen. A couple weeks back here, Iowa had an inland hurricane that flattened a lot of its crop, and so you guys certainly are magicians sometimes to try to figure out how to make this all work. And so looking ahead, I mean, certainly there's a lot of the year left, and your cropping may certainly have a great impact on what your financial situation looks like going into the end of the year. But with the uncertainty still, as we see with business reopenings and school reopenings, and financially how that may play out for you, is there advice that you're getting from your financial advisors, or just things that you're thinking through and managing through yourselves that are protecting you to make sure that you've got the money that you need to make sure you fully cover your operating expenses, and at the same time protect you against having to give it all back in the form of taxes? Mike, can you talk a little bit about what you're hearing and what you're doing?
Sure, Scott. So we had actually met with our financial advisor last week on this issue. Those of us in the U.S. have gotten some artificial money, we like to call it, that's come in. And, all of a sudden something shows up in your checking account, and some of us start thinking about, boy, it's time to trade up our silage truck fleet or something like that. But so in meeting with our CPA, the advice that he gave us, and we pretty much had come to this conclusion that we're just going to hold off, because milk price is so all over the place, and we don't know what's going to happen with schools opening or not. And so we're going to hold off till the end of the year and just sit on this money because we don't know what's going to happen. We can always prepay crop expenses for next year if it gets down to the wire where we need to find some expenses to make sure that we're not giving it back to Uncle Sam, come February. So
yeah. Dwayne, do you have anything you can add to that?
Yeah, I think we've got a lot of tools in the tool belt now in the dairy industry. We've got LGM still, we've got DMC, we've got DRP. So there's a lot of these insurance programs that farmers can utilize to help hedge when they see a milk price that they can make money at. There's certainly a huge amount of uncertainty in the milk market. We got a disparity between the class 3 and the class 4, between cheese and butter powder. And so some parts of the country, they were cashing, $23 milk checks. In other parts of the country, they were getting $17.50, $18. And it was interesting, just yesterday, Trump announced that they were going to support more or shift more funds to food banks to help support feeding families. And today we're nearly limit up on the class 3 price. And so that class 3 price has been driven by cheese going into food banks, which has been awesome for us to be able to support those that are most vulnerable and those most need in our communities. And yet the unintended consequences of that is we've got these disparities between the classes, which make life somewhat difficult. But so for us, it's paying down the operating line and sitting on cash and kind of seeing where the dust settles out on all this. So.
Yeah, thanks for that. John, how about you up north of the border?
Well, we're not really quite in the same situation, I don't think, as south of the border. Certainly, as far as milk sales go, the price has been down, but I wouldn't say that we've been nothing really to get too overly upset about. Yeah, we had some incentive days. We had the clawback on production, but we've made up for some of that. We're pretty much business as usual here. Also, I think we have a little bit of a different tax structure up here as well. So like with the corporation prepaying expenses, it gets us a discount, but it really doesn't do a whole lot on the financials. So yeah, we're just haven't got much to offer on that one. We're just kind of just maintaining what we're doing and keeping an eye on everything.
Yeah, great. Okay, thanks. Lloyd, anything you can add?
Well, the first thing, I would agree with everything Mike and Dwayne are doing. We're also looking at that. The other thing is build inventories right now. Corn is really cheap. It's time to make sure you have more than ample inventories. I think that's a good investment. It's a good asset to have. Feed, we're probably not going to buy much machinery, and then we'll have to manage and have a pretty serious meeting late November and how we're going to move forward to avoid taxes. I've never seen the government react so fast. I think our government decided they weren't going to let things get out of hand like they did in 2009 when we had a major. So the Fed pumped a lot of money into me, including farms. So that was a good percentage of our income this year.
Yeah, thanks for that. I appreciate that. So I'm going to move on with the next question, and this one talks a little bit about how your dairies have maybe changed and evolved to be able to take the resources that you already have and expand them in a way to create some new revenue lines for you. And so that really deals a little bit with diversification on farm, and some farms have gone to some on-farm processing. Some dairies and certainly maybe some of the smaller dairies have started making some cheese. Some of the milking companies have come out with set in place equipment that allows you to do some on-farm bottling, though I don't know that it's necessarily reached North America yet. Some places have gotten into agritourism. We've got a nice farm that's Lloyd, between where we are and where you are, that does a really nice job with agritourism. And so again, these different ways of diversifying your businesses in a way to either provide a greater point of engagement with the consumer population, which we all realize is critical to our ongoing success, and in some cases as a way to kind of bring on some additional revenue lines. So Mike, can you talk a little bit about things that you may have done personally on your farm to try to branch out a little bit with what you're doing in addition to milking cows?
Well, when we spoke before, I mentioned the agritourism. What I didn't mention is it's not a financially viable thing. We don't do it for the fiscal gain. We do it more for the community gain. I think, I think we can harvest a lot of goodwill, and that to us is very important. We have a lot of, we're kind of central between Syracuse, Binghamton, there's Ithaca, Auburn. We're right in the middle, and it's kind of a bedroom community. So it's really important for us to address the non-farm public, and that's why we do the agritourism thing. It's certainly not for money.
And so is that something that you would, just from your experience, is that something that you would encourage dairy farmers to take a closer look at to, again, provide that same type of community engagement and involvement as a way to just, make sure that our younger consumers are really learning and understanding the importance of dairy in their communities?
I personally, I can't stress it enough. I mean, production agriculture today is just a hair over 1% of the population, and as opposed to maybe 75% back in 1900. So you get people that come by, and it seems like every year there's another generation back that my grandfather, my great grandfather, my great great grandfather farmed it. And so you hear that, and even in an agricultural community like ours, it's amazing how the neighbors right around us have no idea what we do as an industry or how we do it. We just had, except for this year, we had 24 years running of hosting all of the fifth grades in our county on our farm for 2 days. And, ultimately those kids may come back and bring their parents to show them what they learned. So, I think the whole community outreach thing is really important as farms get bigger, and, we utilize liquid manure, things like that aren't terribly popular in themselves. People need to know why we do these things. So yeah, it's really important.
Yeah, very good points. Lloyd, when we had talked previously, you mentioned a little bit about some things that you're doing, certainly different from what Mike just described, but can you talk a little bit about it, what you've got going on your farm?
Well, we started up a little business where we're retailing out some hamburger, and because there was such a shortage, store shelves were empty, and there was a temporary shortage because of the shutdowns of the large processing plants. It's a real opportunity for small farms to get permits. Permitting process is fairly easy, and we got the permit to be able to do this, and we're adding a little bit of revenue on each cow we do. It's not a huge thing. Didn't need a lot of upfront investment, so that was kind of nice, and sales are going pretty good. Our daughter, who farms with her husband's family up in north of Green Bay, they have raised a bunch of Angus Holstein cross calves, and they're retailing out steaks and hamburgers, and that business is going crazy good. And so we saw that, and we said, well, we can do hamburger at least. We don't have steers to butcher, but so I think a lot of people have taken advantage of that, and the consumers it's kind of they want to buy local, but if there's a Walmart in their town, they think that's local. So this is a little different spin on that.
Yeah, right. So if we put our orders in now, then you can pack those up and ship them fresh
Sure.
frozen. And
Yeah,
we'll be good, right?
we'd love to do it.
Yeah, thanks. Kevin, how about you? Do you're certainly your dairy size is small by comparison, even to John's, quite frankly. And do you do anything with the 35 or so cows that you have? Do you do anything to bring people onto your dairy and engage with them, whether it be schools or just the regular consumer population? Anything you're doing?
No, not actively pursuing asking people to come. Like we live on a fairly busy road, and we do our best to maintain the yard and keep it looking decent. Mm-hmm. And occasionally we do have people who stop by, they see us out feeding the calves or whatever, and they'll stop and ask and see and want to watch milking and stuff like that. So yeah, we welcome them in if they do stop by. As for sales stuff, no, we don't really do any, other than if we butcher a cow, we'll sell hamburger to family members or some friends.
Yeah.
Or whatever, but that. But a farm down the road from us actually has just started having an on-farm milk vending machine. So you purchase a glass bottle, and you stop by and you fill up your glass bottle with milk at the farm. And there's actually several people in the area that are working on permits and stuff to get that going. Farms locally that are doing that. But for me, myself, I'm not really doing anything future someday, but not right now.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. So when people stop by and see you feeding the calves, you offer to let them come in and clean stalls also?
Yeah, maybe on Saturday afternoon, I have to get them over there to clean calf pens. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. So I know that some of you guys are active on your local boards, and I think it's your involvement there, your leadership there, that certainly brings an important voice to the table. And so if you can, I'd be interested to know if there are things that your individual boards might be talking about addressing right now as a way to help your local dairy communities manage through this time that we're in, and quite frankly, just continue to put building blocks in place to create a better future outlook. Dwayne, can you talk a little bit about what you might be seeing?
Yeah, you bet. So I'm on the local Washington State Dairy Federation board, and it's one of the oldest organizations in the state. Shortly after the state was enacted or started, the Dairy Federation realized that they needed representation in Olympia for politicians, as politicians tend to make life a little bit miserable. And so our board is sitting there trying to make the dairy industry a viable industry in our state. We have a lot of environmental lawsuits that have sued a lot of family farms and put them out of business. And so being vocal with our legislators is incredibly important. And that's something that we're striving to do in Washington State. And then just being involved. A little while ago, there was Starbucks came out and said they wanted to cut dairy. If you want to be environmentally sustainable, you cut dairy out of your morning coffee. And so there are several people, myself included, that were very vocal on social media, and that has an impact. That had an impact. The Starbucks executives reached out to our trade groups or representative groups, and they wanted to tour dairy farms and to see what actually goes on dairy farms. And so I think in the dairy industry, we can't be afraid to be vocal when we are being painted in an unfair manner. And so going out and being proactive on that is incredibly important, and trying to maintain a viable industry in our state.
Yeah, thanks for that work. Mike, I know that you're involved as well locally there in New York. Things that your board is particularly focused on right now?
Well, so thanks to my brother who's willing to stay home and do all the work. I'm allowed to sit on a number of boards, and some of the legislation isn't always the greatest. The town, our own particular town of Homer, wanted to institute laws, rather rigorous ones, about manure storages, and so I took the opportunity to write a law that would, assuage the concerns of the non-farm citizens, as well as give the farmers a break in that this is something that we not only need to do, but we have to do by New York State CAFO law. And then I'll actually, this coming Thursday night, I'll be speaking before our county legislature, who's getting ready to pass a law where they can go out and find farmers whose livestock gets in the road or gets onto people's lawns. And it's just crazy. We don't even have a farmer on our legislature at this point. So I will hope to strike the fear of God into that group on Thursday night. Other than that, I do sit on a dozen boards and chair most of them, and I have testified in front of Congress on immigration issues, and also on environmental sustainability issues. I just think that there's so few of us out there. We really need to take the opportunity to become a voice for our industry whenever we can.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's so one of the other things. So shortly before this this roundtable started, I read an article from a survey of Wisconsin farmers. This was done back in March of this year, and one of the things that I talked about was the mental health and the stress that dairy farmers are often under. There's a great deal of responsibility all of you have. And the fact that you can shoulder that day in and day out is quite commendable. But this survey talked about percentages of dairy farmers that responded, that talked about the fact that they did struggle with some mental health issues. Some of them had actually sought some assistance for that, and it seems like it's long overdue that it's a healthy conversation in our dairy farming community to be having. And I'd just be interested to know if any of you have some local experiences with that allow you to send a message to people that are tuning in right now, to just, give them some guidance or support. John, I think maybe you have something that you could add to that.
Yeah, well, currently my stress level is starting to rise because I've got a cricket in the corner of this office that has an awful lot to say, and I hope you guys aren't hearing it.
We can hear it.
Certainly, yes. Mental health in the last couple of years has really been discussed, and it's about time it has been discussed. I know that Dairy Farmers Ontario is working on making sure people can find the right places to go to get the right information to help with the right problem. And I think that's one of the biggest things that we need to really, truly get ahead of all of this. We got to start right at the beginning of where do we have the resources to get the people to the right place, to get the right information, to fix what's going on. And it can be something like stray voltage, I find, is one I think that's really been creeping through our dairy communities, and people not realizing how much problems it's causing in their barns, and it's starting to really cause a lot of stress on themselves, not really knowing what this invisible enemy is. So how do we get ahead of something like as complicated yet as straightforward as straight voltage? It's things like this that I refer to. Financial stress. We got to get them to the right people at the right time.
Yeah, thanks for that. In the U.S. and again, I know that Lloyd, Mike, and Dwayne, you guys are all active at a board level. Is this the kind of conversation that is taking place amongst the boards as well, where there's this leadership recognition and effort to try to figure out how to get resources in front of farmers and how to find ways to engagement that respect the modesty of the individuals involved and likewise the sensitivity of the subject? Can any one of you guys weigh in on that at all?
The state of Wisconsin has had programs in the past that they have a hotline. So, when one agency or one organization like the state has a program like that, the other boards say, well, that's already handled. And so I haven't heard a lot on the organizations I'm in, except in the newsletters and things, offering hotline numbers or people to talk to.
Yeah, Mike or Dwayne, either of you have anything to add?
Yeah, Scott, I would say if I had to give someone advice, it would be to reach out to your land grant colleges. Every state has one pretty much. And I know in New York State, between the Department of Ag and Markets and Cornell University, they set up, it was about 10 years ago, actually, they set up what we call FarmNet. And you can get that information from Cooperative Extension. And I have to believe that New York is not alone on that. I got to think that I know Penn State has a program like that. And I would imagine that most land grant colleges have something like FarmNet, where they have a staff of financial advisors, farm transition advisors, psychologists, even online all the time to help people through with problems like this. And I know it's been, we've actually used it ourselves on a relatively minor, I suppose, but it was a communication problem between senior partners and junior partners, and we called them in and made a real difference for our own situation. So that'd be my advice.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks. That's a nice as you talk about partners and just that standalone word. I think is a nice segue into the next question, which will be I think the last one for right now before we can get to some of the viewer submitted questions. I'd like to talk or ask each of you to talk a little bit about just what your plan for the future is. And I know that some of you are in a state of succession or in a phase of succession, or may have been for some time. So if you can talk a little bit about that and how you've been able to manage through those challenges for you individually of wanting to give away some control without giving away all control, and your openness and willingness to allow either oncoming partners or oncoming generations to make some mistakes. And but again, it's the look to the future, I think, is really the central focus of this question. And certainly we're approaching year end, but 2021 will be upon us before we know it. And so Kevin, can you talk a little bit about that? What's your future look like?
Well, I hope, well, the program that I'm in, the new entrant program, is a 10-year program. So September, I'm starting year 5. And my goal is, I'm not sure on the timeline of it, but my goal is to eventually be able to not have to rely on my off-farm job to maintain finances. So I hope I'm able to be large enough, have enough income by the time year 10 comes around. That way I can, my dad will be a fair bit older, and I can start taking on some tasks from him as he does all my field work and stuff while I'm working the off-farm job. So the execution of it and the timing of it, I'm not 100% sure, but that is my goal, that by the time the 10-year mark comes around, that I'll be able to quit my off-farm job. On farther than that, I actually took a page out of Dwayne's book by renting land. I'm not sure if that's still true for Dwayne, but he was renting his farms versus owning them. And so we're in a high value land area. Rent is crazy expensive. So I have, as of right now, I have no intentions of owning land. It's a lot cheaper for me to continue to rent. And as long as Dad allows me to rent, then I'll continue to do so. Yeah, hopefully by year 10, I'm able to financially be able to quit my off-farm job. So that's my main goal right now.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. Best wishes for that, for sure. John, how about your future? What do you have planned?
Well, we're kind of in a flux right now. Like we're still going. Things are going well. But we're not quite sure what's going to happen 5 years, 10 years from now. So I think if I was to give any commentary on it, I would say that the approach I'm taking is your farm is always available for sale, whether it's to the next generation or an outside entity. Your farm should always have value, should always have it ready for sale. And as far as letting go, I was at a meeting last winter. The farm was a well-known genetic farm. And the older generation, he says, I had a lot of passion doing what I do. I enjoyed it. The younger generation is looking more at the crossbreeding meat market. He says it's time for them to find their passion. And I think there's a lot of wisdom in that you set the goals for yourself when you are in the midst of your career and you accomplish those goals. It's a lot easier to let go once you've actually done what you appreciated doing. And then it's easier to let the next generation take it over. So I think there's just, when you're getting ready for a move, and certainly I think my brother and I are getting to that point, we have to think of something. To mentally prepare yourself, I think you just have to make sure you accomplished your goals and always have value in your enterprise so that either the next generation wants to step in, they've got something to work with, or you have something that's saleable to another outside entity.
Yeah, that's great advice. Thanks for that. Have you thought about milking crickets?
Well, if I had a lizard, that thing would be fed by now, but I hope you don't hear it too bad. I apologize.
Mike, can you talk a little bit about what you've done?
Sure. So, my brother and I came to a point where, kind of like what John was just saying, do we sell or what do we do? And it was at that point that my son came back. He'd been 10 years out of college and had worked in associated businesses, conservation, and actually for our milk buyer, he worked for them too. And so he was able to come back to the farm and bring something with him off the farm. And personally, I would prefer that as to somebody coming right out of the farm from high school or something. So they've had a chance to see what the rest of the world is like. At the same time, we had a young man that we had hired out of college as a young stock manager who just blew our socks off with his ability with animals. And so Pete and I, my brother, we decided that this was a great opportunity for us. So 5 years ago, we set up an LLC and brought them in as junior partners, and they are transitioning over. We have 1,700 head on the place, and they all go back to the 7 heifers that my dad bought in 1957. We've never purchased animals, so it was So we're all registered Holsteins, and it was important to us to continue on and to find people who had, you know, similar ideas, but their own at the same time. So yeah, I was kicked out of the corn planter and the chopper 3 years ago, and that was a little tough because some of those things can be addictive, but you know, at the same time, somebody else got to learn this stuff. So you just have to come to that decision, and like you said, let the young ones make some mistakes and give them responsibility. So it's worked for us.
Yeah, thanks for that. Lloyd, can you talk a little bit about your dairy, please?
Yes, we're transitioning to two younger partners. We set up an LLC back in 1999. We have a buy sell, so it's easy to get in and it's easy to get out relatively as far as partnerships. Actually, I learned a lot from our peer group. That's a New York-based peer group from Cornell University, and it seems like the dairymen in the East do this easier or more common than we do in Wisconsin. As far as control and turning over the management, I think one of the things you have to realize as you get older is the more control you keep, the more you keep a cap on the creativity and the development of your younger person. So you have to back off. And I think when you keep control too much, you also limit your profitability. And proven that they can take the same asset, make more money, and make more efficiencies. And so after a few initial successes, it's pretty easy to stand back. And I guess I don't miss being out there at 9 o'clock at night anymore in the field when they're all working hard in emergency situations before a rain or something like that. And so yeah, so I guess my succession is I move more from management to more controlling or more managing the overall assets like the farmland and the real estate, and overseeing the finance with more and more input every day. So it's a gradual process. We've been working on it a long time, but I think it's been really successful. And I think the important part is that to realize right now, farm assets can't be backed up by profitability. So that means that the farm assets really aren't worth as much as we think they are. And so there has to be some give and take, because in a buy sell, if you overprice stuff, the buyers are not going to be successful. If you underprice it, the sellers aren't going to get their fair share. So you have to find that median, and that's the beauty of ours. It's a transition over time, so the values constantly change. The value of the stock changes, and so the value of the transition can change every day, and it keeps the flexibility necessary to make it go forward.
Thanks for that. And then Dwayne, your kids are way too young for you to hand over the reins just yet. So do you have some things as you look ahead to the future that that have piqued your curiosity and that you're looking to maybe to grow into? Can you talk a little bit about where you see yourself going?
Yeah, you bet. So I was incredibly blessed. My dad very early on allowed me to make mistakes, and he gave me responsibility, and he gave me areas of the farm to say, hey, this is your area, you manage it. And that was incredibly beneficial for me. And I'm always incredibly grateful for that opportunity. And so I bought my dad out in 2014, somewhat fortuitous given the bull market that we went into at the beginning of 2014. And so, yeah, it's gone well. Some of the challenges we have is we're in a very urban area. And so we have urban encroachment. We're surrounded by a lot of people that don't really like us there. And then we're at the end of the railroad for a lot of our input costs. We have to bring in a lot of corn and soybeans from the Midwest. And then the product portfolio that our co-op sells into is usually the lowest margin product category in the powders that get exported. And so, quite frankly, it's a really difficult area to dairy. And so if I was smart, I would move. I would find a more advantageous place to milk. I'd probably cuddle up in Wisconsin or go to South Dakota. But that's a difficult decision, right? That's something you're uprooting your family for. And so that's kind of my struggle is where do we go from here? And like Kevin was saying, I do lease the dairies. And so that's allowed me to grow and expand and hopefully get, cows paid off and then get into a position where we decide what the future looks like and where we go from here.
Yeah, thanks for that. If you're going to move east, we'll send you a scarf. You're going to need it. So good. Well, thanks, everybody. I appreciate your time talking about these questions. Chrissy, I wanted to certainly leave some time for you to bring in some of the questions that may have been submitted, and then we'll close this out before your next session gets underway. You're muted. You're muted, Chrissy.
Rookie mistake here.
That's good.
Yeah, we definitely won't get to all the questions, but we'll ask one, and maybe if someone wants to answer this one, just let us know. Have any of you been impacted by animal activists and had to change your policies and your procedures on your farm because of that? Anyone want to answer that one? Yeah, Lloyd?
We have not been directly impacted, but we have quarterly animal care meetings, and our goal is to have that animal taken care of the best possible methods from the day of birth till the day they leave the farm. And so every employee, whether even some of the people on the crop crew, it's really important that they understand that these animals are not just an asset. They're something much more important than that. And so we really emphasize animal care. We have a zero tolerance policy, and we enforce it.
Anyone else want to add to that?
I would just say, Chrissy, that very similar to what Lloyd is saying, New York State started a program called Nice Chat back in 2003, which stood for New York State Cattle Health Assurance Program. And we jumped right on board first thing, where it's a matter of, writing SOPs and having documented training and like that with our employees, so that in the event that something should crop up, we would have that in our back pocket to show that we've been, trying to do everything in our power to make sure that animals are treated well.
One thing we've done, our co-op Dairygold invites Nestle out. Nestle will send their representatives out to do animal welfare audits. And so we've had them on the yard to determine that, hey, you guys are taking care of the animals in a manner that we expect. And so that's gone really well. But as far as direct impact of animal activists, we have not experienced that. So.
Good, awesome. All right, so I guess we should wrap it up then. And I just want to say thank you so much to all of you for participating today. It was really great to hear all of your insight. And just a quick apology to some of the YouTube watchers. I made a mistake and put it on the wrong stream for the first few minutes. So, but we'll edit this back up and put it back up as a whole as soon as we can. So luckily for our tech people, they let me know. And then I got that fixed pretty quick, so.
Yeah, I'd like to offer my additional thanks to all of you as well. We appreciate you taking the time out of your day to do this. For everybody that's joining in, I would encourage you to visit the exhibitor links. Again, without having the trade shows available for all of us to get together, it's important to not forget your exhibitors. Take a look at what they're talking about, what they have to offer, and realize that we're all on this same crazy train with you. So we appreciate whatever time you have to give us. And otherwise, I think, looking ahead to the coming months as we close in on to the end of the year, my wish for all of you and everybody joining in is a strong finish to close the year. We'll get back together in 2021 and maybe make some new memories. So again, thanks everybody, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Thanks. Take care.